Hello, Americans. My name is Anthony Wall. I put a link to a short YouTube video that has President Trump, President slash Chief, no. But presidents slash chiefs are distinct from founders. And our founders, James Madison, I read they declassified. And nature shows us when you put it in context. When they use James Madison's plan to force counter extorted people at key locations in more than 13 colonies were entrenched, even with slavery rolls, northern and southern colonies, against women, against Native Americans. Anyone tried to go against that, they would be sent. Any part of it, let alone it all together. They would be sent by rolls with it only permitted since before our founders were born, since before religious messengers were born. There are proofs. It is more probable and practical than that which is convicted by the experts of the names of the people of the sciences. They bring up Thomas Paine and they separate him from James Madison's plan. Why and how our founders did not have free speech. Why and how everyone had to pretend fake narratives at the same time. Why and how everyone wasn't allowed to be filled in on the plan because they would have censored them and destroyed it. Worse than it, because it was the plan, we still haven't gotten the Constitution unabridged. Still, you guys change and fake what we say. You get away with it because of collusion /S. Every database, the campuses I went to, there are ties between those campuses and names next to them and conjunctive to them. Like a DeMoro family is one of the families involved with the Scalora family with federal evidence as crimes when I was a kid and when I was an adult. And they forced collusions of Saudis before and after the World Trade Center attack, with FBI Director Robert Luskin and multiple Connecticut police departments further involved for refusing to identify themselves legitimately while they are already stacking and having stacked fake transcripts and ties to me at the police station I weren't at all as a kid and I was an adult. Other places too, in other words, fake ties to me and other kids and with doctors. They also had to hide live progressions tied to that with WFSB, Connecticut's Channel 3 News. And they faked ties to doctors to me when I was a kid. A bunch of people with Connecticut campuses, intercities. They have medical offenders who have collusions timed with untimely death at Trinity College and with other federal evidences crimes, the former director of the FBI behind it, and people involved with a Robert Rodriguez and others on my street from other areas who planted confessions and demonstrations, collusions with that. And he brought up the principal child abusers campus to me too, first, and confessions regarding the name Scalora, which is one of the houses involved in my area, with intelligence families force-checked her and persuaded to collusions with child abusers, leaders, and kids years apart, first forced, and more then and now. But it's also tactically juxtaposed, distinct natures of organized crimes, and including the people that have directed to be standing collusions with such as unmarked police firms or whatever. They have collusions actual with identity theft, fraud, slanders, which is also relative because we have black people's rights of eyes. And even if we don't know what James Madison communicated about that, which you guys don't know, because you had to replace the campuses A through Z, sickly distinctly too, to use functionally how sickly does non-distinctly, even though it is one thing that we could all counter at the same time to make positive means out of nowhere everywhere at once. In other words, no one allows anyone to address that. They sense us, and they change what we fake. They change, fake, hide what we say and say. Then they go fishing, pretending other. WFSB, I spoke many times. They put fake World Trade Center attack evidences. They have people from Saudi Arabia involved with them, and they forced my Saudi ex to collusion with them, with Wethersfield Police, Rocky Hill Police, FBI Director Robert Luskin, Newington Police Departments, retired and standing Wethersfield Police Chiefs have a Phil Cololo involved with them, with their intimate ties too, and predicate acts on my street further, with a Bob Chase and Whiting Forensics, with a bunch of people involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and predicate acts on my street with them since I was a kid. Whiting Forensics has roles with an 80 Carriage Hill Drive. Recorded, confessed, demonstrate, confirmed. Joshua Julian and Mark Violet have been planting identity theft, fraud, slanders with the Joshua Julian. And Facebook is collusion with them with a proven principal upskirt nature. He was involved with much worse with the kids before that, never, but also forced then too. A principal Bean. I caught them with that first. They changed the head, fake what's recorded on Facebook. Where Facebook pages of mine were taken relative to their collusions with murders and untimely deaths and names next to body dumping spots years apart. How are you? There's some the the only Ron. He had different cults, I think, too. But he brought up. He said he was at a wedding with Judge Napolitano, and he has roles with police with syntax where they play games with syntax with sexual and medical offenders of kids. So Mendez police with the Wethersfield Police Department, they like the older one. He was he was the only one that I saw there. And I didn't speak with him one word in my life. And he put me in fake conversation. They put falsified police reports, multiple for the same arrest. He's one of the ones collusions with a Bob Chase and his confessions regarding a Phil Collo involved with federal evidences crimes with them, drugs and medicines crimes, putting fake things in databases, criminally foreign influence uses of systems of Connecticut. The people, the types of criminals and types of counters to things, they have collusions with those things. A victim's advocate with victims advocates with New Britain Superior Court are increasingly collusions with sexual and medical offenders of kids and with overt criminal enterprises and with multiple boyfriends of even if she's intelligence family, which there are proofs that she is, a Bobby Jean, and there's a Chris Walters and a Ray Collo have people tied to them that recorded, confessed, demonstrate, confirm them involved on Covington Street next to Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, and on the sides of it there, involved with a bunch of people, involved further with child abusers, intercities, and intelligence families that lived near me in the past, involved with the one with the multiple police departments with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and crime methods where they put multiple falsified police reports and confessions for the same police, switching names into branch. These are people that had collusions with names on all sides of the criminal and civil cases, interstates, and in the court next to the World Trade Center towers the morning of the attack. There's a Claudia Scalora, who's one of the ones involved with them. With other people named Scalora, I don't even know other names. There's also a Sebastian Scalora, or a Subby Scalora, involved with his educators too, with the intelligence families, intercities, with kids that don't even go to the same campuses together, planting evidences with people like with Police Chief Cintron has a daughter named Jessica Cintron. I never saw her in my life, never met her, don't know her. She's recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with locations associated with her father, like the corners of Elm Streets in Rocky Hill and Wethersfield, where they've been planting collusions with names on all sides of criminal and civil cases, interstates, in the courts at the same time in the police forums. Increasingly, people tied to a former mayor of Gold. Since I was a kid, I've been making confessions, demonstrations, confirmations. Their collusions with people that were putting fake things in databases at campuses, fake ties, fake natures of ties to kids. In my second grade class, there were people that had been spying on me when I was in first grade, and then playing games with the kids. And they've been then when I was in third grade. I think that's something with the Tim O'Brien. Tim O'Brien has roles with some KKK theme, black theme, Confederate flag theme, intelligence families, per them. Not, but I didn't tell him that. That was after he made confessions about it. And time has something to do with when they made the confession in the back. They told me to sit in a car that was in their driveway, two different people. And then they made confessions to me about their roles with differences. Like even black, white. And these are supposed to be identities of the law. In other words. And they're involved with it. Those do things because there's things that you should tell your parents. If you tell them, they're going to hurt you one way. If you tell them, you don't tell them, they're going to hurt you another way. And then it's in a way /s, you'll be able to defend your kids from use of location /s involved. That's really what leads people. See, they're attaching kids in their family. They use the right to lie when they don't have the right to lie. A bunch of educators tied to Eric Mendez and his older brother have the FBI director, former director of the FBI, former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, recorded involved with nonverbal communications by people. One of the things manifest that are criminally foreign influence. And other people, they non-verbally confirm what other people confess for him, like a Thaddeus Grabowski in Fox News, with various natures of federal criminals and these Mendez police intercities with child abusers. And it has something to do with their roles all along Route 3 and conjunctions to it and to that. And there are proofs that people associated with the World Trade Center attack had roles with the pipe bomb planting and the difference of guilt with that use/S2. This is a method that keeps itself completely screened, even though nature has been demonstrating since founding affronts against Native, affronts against women, every woman, affronts, which is also against every person, though. Both those things. Affronts against black peoples, white civilians, northern colonies and southern colonies. Roles with such were only permitted. Otherwise, and only permitted was to censor anybody trying to overcome that. Anyway, other than through their internationally monitored conversations. And the differences of their guilt or the guilt of overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and terrorists originally and still propagated. To have those things in the difference of their guilt to hide behind and through. Where collusions with the breaching method never stopped being. That's one of the reasons, even though our founders communicated about, James Madison detailed about the breaching method, it knew that we were going to come out of things like slavery that no one wants. It knew that we were going to come out of things like women's suffrage that no one wants. But they knew to do that, we would have to start speaking about morality, reason, and the Constitution on a bridge, and with the value of that. But that was against the law, including of the early states. You don't vote on slavery. And if you're voting on slavery, you're they were also sensing who's going to make when they make subject treatment. See, there is shock and awe by the people, distinctly from the individuals as leaders. All of a sudden, they're above locations, areas, and states that came through criminally foreign influence / hyper-criminally foreign influence campuses. In other words, they're valuing things that are faked into databases and they're pretending they can't discern that. There are only 3 branches of government clearer than day. And they're making themselves guilty by them not following mandated law when people say, fix the fake news of WFSB, the fake conversations they pretended with me and with others. That was valued as multiple natures of organized crime, collusion, / all kinds of names they brought up with that. They're attaching little kids to fake ties to doctors. The agencies have collusions with the houses and businesses next to Harvard Hospital, too. And they have roles with investigators of the World Trade Center attack. They have collusions with all sides used remotely, criminally foreign influence. Cover-ups of how they have directions to hide things, like relative to how they have all these different countries involved with Central Connecticut State University, including Somali people who are distinctly hurt to make the counter, to measure and maintain the counters to it, blaming other things, others, ourselves, for things that nature itself and that America's founders communicated for us to blame in the breaching method, that which is hyper-foreign, for example. 2, nature itself shows us there is a difference between criminal insidiousness natures of peace and that identity of peace that reveals evolution's fruits, gifts, and means out of nowhere. And so it shows us what we could discern as a hyper peace. And science would have revealed this had one of them had an honest voice, capable of being. But you guys were child abused since you were kids. You're not supposed to debate these things. You guys, I think Thomas Jefferson was a founder. Let's debate it. It's already James Madison and our founders, plural, who had to be used to counter. We know they existed because they counter-extorted key people at key locations. The only reason they were capable of it too is because the laws were so sick and the penalties were so sick, and the spots with the penalty locations were already collusion/S. Sandy Hook has a prison with people that are involved with that and their campuses and the systems, foreign and domestic. They have collusions with the crime scenes before their forced patients and criminals were in there, and with the same house/S involved with the judicial branch offices and the corrections offices of Connecticut being and having been used remotely, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought since before its inception, and from years before the World Trade Center attack, with people with time collusion/S since with it. Many tied to a Kevin Dillon and Enzo Fianza and his cousin, and people that lived across the street from his cousin per them, like a Sal Civiello. He's involved with my fourth grade class, with former mayors and things like that. Like people that we were only polite to, you walk by one time, and people don't know all faking things together. Increasingly, people like when I was in first, and they're putting then pretend like they know you when you're, oh, I don't like that person. You don't know me to like me or not like me. And the more people like me than not, because I minded my own business. The people that are pretending passions and emotions also have ties to time collusions with people who have roles of predicate acts with facts. And with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and with names on all sides of the Ninth Circuit Court next to the World Trade Center towers, the morning of the attack. The last morning the World Trade Center towers were standing. And in the court next to it, the court itself had proven from inside of it a sequence shifts. You guys are denying that, and you guys are then you go fishing for the breaching method. Then you can't defend that and afford to have honest what was spoken by the people you're speaking of. You're not researching things legitimately. Make excuses. Oh, hiding the little comments. Oh, why don't you just call the police? Because they're using wire crime methods. They already faked me being at the police station, speaking with him as a kid, and I was an adult. The FBI has more upskirt nature pictures after the principal child abuser was caught for that. They already had collusion/S with them before that. Too, I don't know. They're trying to make a fake exception being tied to my neighbor, Ray Colo, and his father, Ray Colo, at Wethersfield. They like some shooting, turkey shoot or whatever it is, with the FBI themed one time. Increasingly, the FBI, the CIA are also involved with people associated with them, interstates, with state police forms, and with Middlesex Community College, and officers forging and switching names. In other words, a whole bunch of people involved with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, former standing chairperson, Racketeering on Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act, involved with organized crimes and abuses of kids, identity theft, fraud, slanders. This breaching method knew that nature itself would show names A through Z. One of the things all of those crazy affronts on all the types of differences were about at the same time equally. They're all about being about a human fact-cheating nature breaching method. Now, Americans, we knew this. We and the breaching method knew we would. And it needs to keep that. It kept keeps each age of fact-cheating nature. They have the founding locations, not just the ones in Wethersfield, but old Wethersfield, Connecticut. There's a witch trials place next to Webb House that makes it, that makes it one of the best founding locations to observe, which is relative to all of them. At the founding locations across America, where they had and have obligations to have understood deeply and profoundly James Madison's plan, had to force everybody. And why? Why is because there was a breaching method entrenched. This is declassified. This is known. The reason it's gotten away with, people pretend that's such as debatable and they get away with it, is because of use slash self value with uses of their words. The words of people, not even our founders, but they're claimed our founders. And our founders knew that they would have to do that when they were defending themselves. Oh, well, Thomas Jefferson wrote this, he's our founder. Our founders directed us to understand there was a plural founders that we don't know the names of, and they forced everyone to take part with the Declaration of Independence. They forced everyone to take part with the Constitutional Convention. And if they told on who forced them, which is those plural founders and James Madison, they would have been destroyed. They would have been destroyed anyway by the people they would have to tell to. That's how sick the breaching method was with the laws against everyone. Per the method of not just keeping everyone used remotely from abroad and sensing for the breaching method /S, but the same thing being and having been there already entrenched. We could observe how this was entrenched at England and in Russia. The suburbs look almost exactly alike from America to Russia to Ukraine, even though our founders declassified about how even then, before cars and everything, before our founders were born, they wanted to build better and safer, an identity of relationship to water and to the ground. All about business, it would cause, they figured out it was more cheaper to do it. We had to make a country out of nowhere, and lying was only permitted by countries A through Z. America's difference comes when we get unabridged, and comes through the potential of that. We're right at the edge of having that difference real, where it's difference as the human species body of individual bodies, and all group differences its way. You guys are only capable of valuing group differences the way the breaching method showed you. So you have this broken campuses, and no one has figured out how to fix them. So President Trump's style is distinct from President Obama's style and all the other presidents, but everyone has failed because you came through the campuses when you guys were kids. You were supposed to understand James Madison's plan. And no matter what if the whole thing was made up, what those witch trials were about, and next to what they're about, next to Webb House, now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum, used as a tool to measure and sense for the breaching method, other communicated than our founders communicated at the founding locations A through Z. Otherwise, roles, needs, and nature sensing for the breaching method and pretending other too. And getting away with it per the relativity of this. You're going to speak about artificial intelligence, people? Hyper intelligence. Programming is capable of being. God. Played hear native drums, long gone. But try anyway. Bach sings, it sings, but makes a shush to hear. What makes no sound, but shush. There are proofs that people tied to, Clinton people have roles of Russians in Ukraine, and it's nothing against Russians in Ukraine. Just example, they have people from Korea at the same time, like with a Mark Violet and a Leahy family, has roles with all these different countries and people involved with the World Trade Center attack and military breached and language experts. A Dr. Shu recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed with a whole bunch of people on off Two Route Highway and Hangdog Lane are involved with his roles, planting evidences on and off campuses. And with confessions tied to Route 3 and conjunctions to it and to that relative. That's one of the people involved with the Saudi attackers with people from Wethersfield interbranch offices and Wethersfield police, fake transcripts and ties to me as a kid, now as an adult. They also tried to make they also were shown they need to hide how they were planting fake exceptions, and they had collusion /S with you /S of that. It's not, in other words, we have black pupils, whites of eyes, to know it's not just about if they can have make the right outcome in a case or the wrong outcome. They're making mistakes with everything. In other words, and they're showing they need to hide that by having the news collusion /S hyper additionally, therefore sensing for the breaching method in the future too. They can't go back and have discern all that which is actually discernible relative to the breaching method's use of location /S. Not just in America. It's everywhere the human species body has a body. This breaching method measures and maintains the only people that could operate the names of countries A through Z as locations, areas, and states. That it forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded and propagated only capable of blaming other things, others, or ourselves through defenses of natures of reason, logic, facts, fact-checking nature, quality aspects in nature that can't defend itself and afford to be heard, let alone to protract short words with convictions proper by that which is true all way and capable. In other words, and as exceptions in exception nature. There's a mean that nature itself can be used to show that people have been valuing fake exceptions to keep this from being discerned. There is one identity of volume that is all other volumes, while not, but anyway. And that's the way it uses, it's constantly showing us. It is not every volume that we could discern or even make up like art. But we can't help anything, even we totally make it up like art. It's inseparable from its volume /hyper volume science. Inseparable distinctly from the finite, the order of the finite. And as the extent we could grapple with it, no matter how great we could get at that. And the same thing with that which is active. There's only the extent of that which is active and or grouped that it is distinctly to itself that way. We are shown that we are individual species bodies of individual bodies. The birds, a whole bunch of individual types of one bird, one species body. And even the birds have male and female. They have group differences that are being generated. These are group differences generated between distinct species bodies of individual bodies. So we can discern it's nature's identity of relationship to itself, generating the parts of itself as a whole that we have been syntax, therefore nature systems tactical ulterior from, like has conjunction /S to our short words with means, being a volume, being an identity of volume, a nature of volume, identity of relationship to itself that can't be mimicked by any other volume without having demonstration /S a bit. This breaching method employed those demonstrations effectively to show locations, areas, and states everywhere the species body has a body standing. They need to keep those demonstrations blamed on other things, others, ourselves. We could address this by all training the same way at the same time. And pantheism was revealed for this. But valuing exceptions in exception nature like yin yang. Otherwise, the nature shows us negative value nature progressions, X in nature. We're not being led by the hyper invisible, but still discernible. So if we name it, but there's a reason we need to make a scientific name and agree on what we're going to call it. Or one could agree to call all the names or some of the names grouped. but they just have to be honest. Like, for example, someone could maybe Jesus' name comes with cipher, juxtapose, energy / energizing, see, your see. Maybe, in other words, Allah's name does too. Alpha longs, long alpha's high. The beginning of the Quran and the beginning of the Old Testament, they have parts they say that dictate how to read those, how to appreciate those books in the religions, but I never even hear anyone speaking about it, because their differences and other people's differences were already used through our own, by them and by other people. Otherwise, relative to where and how they are sensed. Anyone, even if they try to defend or use as the evidences the value they are, having black people's whites of eyes alone, and with just some basic fundamental examples, little kids have means to discern the criminal insidious natures of positive treatments and negative treatment of people regarding those impositions that the breaching method only allowed to be manifest. Specifically, where it measures and maintains voicings, natures of expertise, like American history, self-added collusion /S with criminally foreign influence, evidences treatments, self-added while having been used remotely. Oh, we need to believe in the integrity of this branch of government. Get down. Constitution doesn't say we have to have faith in government. And what the Constitution says, we're supposed to get the Constitution unabridged and let nature show us. You guys are bringing up crimes, leaving out the predicate acts with facts, and the crime scenes collusion /S that never stop being at interbranch locations too, and then further hyper additionally at their state offices and other countries equivalent /S. These are identities of order tactical ulterior from the identity of order that generates distinct species bodies of individual bodies and all group differences, so we can discern too. The moment we are using or have been using systems abridged from its own, it demonstrates with negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures that also contain demonstrations /S of a human fact treatment nature breaching method behind a whole bunch of different types of impositions on people and on subjects and subject treatments and subject treatment nature. So all sides are trying to say the same thing. President Trump /Chief Trump is trying to say you're supposed to be a congressperson, and you're coming with a broken grammar school, speech for humanity, and for the different parts of its body, of individual bodies. It's exactly the way the breaching method wanted and needs. And Congressperson Ilhan Omar is trying to say, no one's caring about us. In other words, the sciences, the campuses, the reason no one's caring because you guys are forcing it too. You guys are forcing it, not Miss Ilhan. Any voice that is not speaking for the individual species body of individual bodies and group differences the way nature does, they're going to have to value the breaching method, showing everybody individually grouped and together how they need to hide what was actually recorded as the value of that. These are criminal insidious natures of positive treatments and negative treatments that are only capable of being at countries exposé. There are proof, even if it's not made up, about the recent video footage shown to us through the news media and other media regarding Pete Hegseth and the shooting of a boat in Venezuela. There were proofs that is, at least part of the information is made up. And they're doing this to make, because the breaching method show everyone they have to respond to the breaching method. No one knows how to respond to it properly. And so the breaching method also shows them how to try to overcome it. It educated you guys when you were kids. It replaced what our founders communicated with what they said, leaving out how and why they left declassified for us not to allow that. We're supposed to not entertain people pretending that our founders were known, without pretending that we know their names. The only name of a founder that they had the security to let us know for certain was one of them, was James Madison. We're directed to understand how James Madison, his plan, is what caused the Declaration of Independence in the Constitution. See, but people who already blamed on other things, others ourselves, what caused the Civil War. There are people, they're pretending they're experts on military. There's not one modern military that's an expert at anything. There are collusion / has all kinds of organized crimes. UConn has foreign and domestic military, all kinds of legal corruption that we're going to heal. But at countries A through Z, even the best legal campuses are still currently foreign influence, tactically delusions wrong. They have shown they need to hide roles of predicate acts with facts methods / S and wire crime acts and methods. WFSB has roles with identity thefts, fraud, slanders, with the Violet family involved with Harvard Hospital, and with a bunch of people with the houses and businesses next to them, involved with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and child abusers, leaders of kids, with UConn involved, at intercities, with foreign and domestic military too at Harvard Hospital, involved with the World Trade Center attack, and with investigators of it. It's also UPS, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They have collusions with people through the years involved with per them, even if they were directed to make it up, because it was intelligence families that were recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with investigators being in all ages of their family, being and having been used remotely, criminally, foreign influence, tactically, delusions wrong, like on Covington Street in the Britain. Since before I ever lived there temporarily in an apartment there. Before that and through that, the leasing agent, his family, had collusions also, him with his son, with a bunch of different boyfriends too, from a girl who said she was a stripper at East Hartford, one of the East Hartford locations, involved with FBI Director Robert Luskin too, with the confessions of people tied to her. And those locations. And Robert Chavarie is one of the lawyers associated with the former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, with all kinds of wire and mail crimes. There are proofs that they might have had collusions, but through their roles with all these different countries, but with the anthrax, to per itchy things associated with people interstates, who also had intercities and intercampuses and intra-campuses, collusions with identity theft, fraud, slanders, who had collusions also with the World Trade Center attack and spots next to it the night before it, other ways, short-term and long-term before it, and that morning before the World Trade Center attack, and with the networks and the differences of guilt of intelligence at the networks or next to them. A bunch of people that have roles with systems and logging things in databases for various reasons, things like that, at and next to Fox Connecticut News and Hartford, Connecticut. They have collusions with campuses that way too, building upon predicate acts with facts, methods / S, collusion / S. These are people with sense and sensibilities regarding religions and what people say and said dishonestly, as sequence ships show. And I never responded to her verbally. And then I never had a personal conversation with her. A Miss Riley, who was my algebra class teacher. Increasingly, that class had collusions with some security guards, with probate court judges, family members. That one of them, a Delaware family, and others, a whole bunch of all along Route 3, in conjunctions to it and to that, like Elm Streets in Rocky Hill and Weathersfield. And Eric Oliveria, Mark Violet, others have been planting evidences with multiple police departments and police forms and foreign and domestic military. And people, they said that's also along Route 175 from the founding locations. They've been planting evidence on my street from other areas with people all along Route 175. And conjunctions to it and that, like Ridge Road, people all along Ridge Road. And like Ridge Road and Knott Street corner has a Paul Kelly involved with people associated with him and his neighbors with syntax, with identity theft, fraud, slanders. I never had a word of conversation with Paul Kelly. He's involved with his neighbors are involved with WTNH, with the FBI too, with some sexual and medical offenders of kids, with probate court judges and doctors, foreign and domestic, who have been putting fake things in databases while tactically delusions raw. So we have a problem where not A through Z have failed to speak for difference. This is why both Mr. Kaepernick and President Trump can't defend the flag right or counter it right, where it's being used wrongly. And no one can speak for the Republic properly. The words behind the, in other words, you guys put physics before nature as physics. The body of value, the body that generated, it is nature itself shows us is most probable and practical to theorize, let alone to convict. That its identity relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that started generating everything until physics were generated relative to that value progression that came from before physics. And then while as physics, that part of itself is the part of, as a distinct part of physics itself. Every part of anything made up has three identities of possession over it, even the most finite detail. As we'll observe, vaccines. I teach us things. Please get me off the fake conversations with WFSB. Judge Napolitano's sense and sensibilities are being and have been used remotely by Fox Connecticut News, involved with Weathersfield Police, and various courts have been putting fake transcripts with intelligence families next to them too, like one's named Mendez and Domain. And Alison Mulcahy. They have pollutions all along Route 3, conjunctions to it and to that, like where Hangdog Lane runs into Two Route Highway. I never had a conversation with them too. Try to fake other with the domain. They try to make fake exception from across the room in my algebra class. Is increasing, and that algebra class teacher, Miss Riley, she repeated sexual things about a neighbor of mine and made it Jewish themed, and I didn't respond to it. And then Mike Domain was repeating sexual things on Hangdog Lane regarding Alison Mulcahy. He has something to do with their roles next to Fox Connecticut News with a bunch of people. That's in Hartford, Connecticut. But a bunch of people have roles with federal crimes on my street, with judges and prosecutors too in foreign countries. There's a Rick Sanfaglione that also sought me out on my street to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. They have collusions with an O'Brien family and a Cololo family, and with the Smith family, with people with the Weathersfield Police Department, where it was then and where it is now, with the town offices, and with probation officers are increasingly involved with various natures of organized crimes, and some murders years apart, and confessions and all this stuff brought up at the same time. And there's not one identity of the law with integrity to speak to. They're even changing what people and faking, hiding what people say about things like murders. You should fear God because these are the ones involved with the World Trade Center attack, black people who disbelieve.